Rome. The year is 1492. Church bells echo across the city while thousands gather beneath the shadow of St. Peter's Basilica. To the public, the Catholic Church is the house of God. But behind these sacred walls, another empire is rising. An empire built not on holiness, but on money, seduction, poison, and fear. At the center of it all stood one family, the Borgias. To some, they were brilliant political masterminds who transformed Renaissance Italy forever. To others, they were monsters hiding beneath holy robes. Their enemies accused them of murder, of corruption, of bribery, of turning the papacy into a criminal dynasty. And at the head of this terrifying family stood one man, Rodrigo Borgia, the man who became Pope Alexander V, a pope with children, a pope with mistresses, a pope who treated the Vatican like a royal palace. Beside him stood his beautiful and mysterious daughter, Lucrezia Borgia, a woman rumored to poison her enemies with a single drink. And then there was Cesare Borgia, cold, brilliant, merciless, a prince dressed as a cardinal who would become one of the deadliest men in Italy. Some historians say he inspired Niccolo Machiavelli's famous book, The Prince. This is not just the story of a family. It is the story of power without limits. A dynasty that ruled Renaissance Italy through fear, ambition, and manipulation. And even today, more than 500 years later, the name Borgia still sounds like a warning. This is the rise and fall of the Borgia family. To understand the Borgias, we first need to understand Renaissance Italy. This was not one united country. Italy was divided into powerful city-states: Florence, Venice, Milan, Naples, and Rome. Each one fought constantly for land, wealth, and influence. Kings plotted against dukes. Mercenaries sold their swords to the highest bidder. And the Catholic Church was not only a religious institution, but it was also one of the most powerful political forces in Europe. The Pope controlled armies, taxes, land, and enormous wealth. Whoever controlled the papacy could shape the future of Italy itself. This dangerous world created the perfect environment for ambitious families to rise. Families like the Medici, the Sforza, and eventually the Borgias. But unlike the old Italian noble families, the Borgias were outsiders. Their origins were Spanish, and many Italians deeply resented them. That resentment would later fuel some of the darkest rumors ever spread about any family in European history. Rodrigo Borgia was born in 1431 in the Kingdom of Valencia in modern-day Spain. He was intelligent, charming, and incredibly ambitious. His uncle, Alfonso Borgia, became Pope Calixtus in 1455. That changed everything. Almost immediately, Rodrigo began climbing the ladder of power inside the church. Critics accused the Borgias of nepotism, using family connections to gain influence. But during the Renaissance, this practice was extremely common. Rodrigo became a cardinal while still a young man, and he quickly proved himself to be politically gifted. He understood something many church leaders ignored. Power was not won through prayer alone. It was won through alliances, money, and fear. Rodrigo became one of the richest and most influential cardinals in Rome. He lived in luxury, hosted magnificent banquets. He surrounded himself with art, gold, and beauty. But he also had many lovers and several children. Among them were Cesare, Juan, Joffa, and Lucrezia Borgia. Even though priests were expected to remain celibate, many powerful church officials secretly had families. Still, Rodrigo's behavior shocked many people, yet nothing could stop his rise. In 1492, after a fiercely political papal election, Rodrigo Borgia became pope. He took the name Alexander, and from that moment forward, the Vatican would never be the same. The election of Alexander immediately became controversial. Many historians believe bribery played a major role in his victory. Wealthy church officials were allegedly promised land, titles, and money in exchange for their votes. Whether every accusation was true or exaggerated, one thing was certain. Alexander ruled like a king. He placed family members in powerful positions. He strengthened the Borgia influence across Italy, and he used the church to build a dynasty. His son Cesare became a cardinal at only 18 years old. His daughter, Lucrezia, became a valuable political tool through arranged marriages. For Alexander, family came before everything. But the Borgias also faced dangerous enemies. Powerful Italian families hated them. Religious reformers condemned them, and rumors spread through Rome like wildfire. Stories claimed the Borgias poisoned rivals during banquets. Some said they used a deadly poison called cantarella. Others believed Lucrezia carried poison in a hidden ring. But historians today still debate how much of this was real. Many of these stories were spread by political enemies who wanted to destroy the Borgias' reputation. Still, the family's behavior gave people plenty of reasons to fear them. No member of the family became more mysterious than Lucrezia Borgia. She was born in 1480, beautiful, educated, graceful, and trapped inside one of the most dangerous families in Europe. For centuries, Lucrezia was portrayed as a cold-hearted poisoner. Paintings and novels transformed her into a symbol of deadly seduction. But modern historians believe much of this image was unfair. In reality, Lucrezia may have been more victim than villain. Her father used marriage as a political weapon. At just 13 years old, she was married for the first time. The marriage quickly became useless politically, so Alexander arranged for it to be cancelled. Rumors exploded across Rome. People whispered about scandal and corruption. But Lucrezia had little control over her own life. She became a pawn in the Borgia strategy for power. Her second husband, Alfonso of Aragon, was later murdered. Many suspected Cesare Borgia ordered the killing because Alfonso had become politically inconvenient. Imagine the terror of living inside that family. A family where alliances changed overnight, where betrayal could mean death. Eventually, Lucrezia married Alfonso d'Este of Ferrara. And surprisingly, she became a respected duchess. She supported artists and poets. She governed territories. And many records suggest she was intelligent, diplomatic, and compassionate. The monster history remembers may not have been the real Lucrezia at all. If Alexander was the brain of the Borgia family, Cesare was the sword. Born in 1475, Cesare Borgia was ruthless, fearless, and extremely intelligent. At first, he entered the church and became a cardinal. But Cesare hated religious life. He wanted military power. And after the mysterious murder of his brother, Juan Borgia, in 1497, Cesare's path changed forever. Juan's body was found floating in the Tiber River. No one knew who killed him. Some suspected political enemies. Others whispered that Cesare himself arranged the murder out of jealousy. The truth remains unknown. But after Juan's death, Cesare became the main heir to the Borgia dynasty. He abandoned the church, became a military commander, and launched brutal campaigns across central Italy. City after city fell before him. He used violence with terrifying efficiency. But he was also brilliant. Cesare understood strategy, propaganda, and fear better than almost anyone of his time. One famous story reveals his cruelty perfectly. A brutal governor named Ramiro de Lorca helped Cesare control a rebellious region using violence and terror. But once order was restored, Cesare had the man publicly executed. Why? Because Cesare wanted the people to blame the cruelty on the governor, not on himself. It was a calculated political performance, a message: fear me, but admire me. This strategy deeply impressed political philosopher Niccolo Machiavelli. In fact, many historians believe Cesare inspired The Prince, one of the most famous political books ever written. Machiavelli saw in Cesare the ultimate ruler, intelligent, decisive, and willing to do anything to maintain power. By the early 1500s, the Borgias had become legendary, but not in a good way. Enemies across Europe painted them as demons disguised as nobles. Stories accused them of incest, poisonings, murder, corruption, orgies inside the Vatican. Some tales were probably exaggerated propaganda. Others may have contained truth. Separating fact from fiction is extremely difficult. The Borgias lived during a brutal period of history where violence and political betrayal were common. But because they were foreigners in Italy, and because they became so powerful, they became perfect targets for hatred. The Protestant Reformation later used the Borgias as examples of corruption inside the Catholic Church. Writers and artists transformed them into symbols of evil, and over time, the myths grew larger than reality itself. Yet historians today argue that many other Renaissance rulers behaved just as brutally. The difference was simple: the Borgias lost, and history is often written by the victors. For years, Cesare seemed unstoppable. Then everything collapsed almost overnight. In 1503, Pope Alexander suddenly became seriously ill. Some historians believe malaria caused his death. Others believed poisoning was involved. Rumors spread immediately. Some claimed the Borgias accidentally drank poisoned wine meant for someone else, but there is no solid evidence proving this story. Alexander died on August 18, 1503. Without his father's protection, Cesare's empire began to crumble. His enemies moved quickly. Alliances vanished. Territories rebelled, and powerful rivals seized their chance. Cesare himself became sick and weakened. Eventually, he was arrested. His dream of building a permanent Borgia kingdom in Italy collapsed completely. He later escaped and fled to Spain, but his glory was gone. In 1507, at the age of 31, Cesare Borgia died in battle in Navarre. The feared warrior who once terrified all of Italy died almost forgotten. His body was reportedly stripped and left exposed. A shocking end for a man who once dreamed of ruling a kingdom. Why does the Borgia story still fascinate people today? Because they represented something terrifyingly modern. They understood the image: manipulation, political theater, fear, and ambition. The Borgias blurred the line between religion and power. They transformed the Vatican into a battlefield of politics. They demonstrated how appearances can conceal dangerous truths, but they also became victims of propaganda. Some accusations against them were likely true. Others were almost certainly exaggerated or invented. Modern historians continue debating where the truth ends and the legend begins. Was Lucrezia really a poisoner? Did Cesare murder his own brother? Did Alexander truly corrupt the papacy beyond repair? Some questions may never be answered. But perhaps that uncertainty is exactly why the Borgias remain so captivating. They exist in the space between history and myth. Even after their downfall, the Borgias never disappeared from history. Their story inspired novels, movies, television shows, and endless conspiracy theories. The name Borgia became associated with ambition and corruption. But beyond the scandals, they also shaped Renaissance politics in major ways. They strengthened centralized authority in parts of Italy. They influenced diplomatic strategy, and Cesare Borgia helped inspire political theories still studied today. Their rise also revealed a deeper truth about Renaissance Europe. Behind the beauty of Renaissance art and culture was a brutal struggle for survival. The same era that produced Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci also produced assassinations, betrayals, and endless wars. The Borgias did not create that world. They simply mastered it better than most. More than 500 years later, the Borgias still haunt history. Their story feels almost unbelievable. A pope who ruled like a king. A daughter turned into a legendary femme fatale. A son who became the model for ruthless political power. Heroes to some, villains to others. But one thing is certain. The Borgias understood humanity's oldest weakness, the hunger for power. And once people taste absolute power, they rarely give it up willingly. In the end, the Borgias lost everything they fought for. Their empire collapsed, their enemies celebrated, and their name became a dark legend. But perhaps that was their final victory, because centuries later, the world still remembers them, not as ordinary rulers, but as the family that turned Renaissance Italy into a game of ambition, fear, and survival. And in many ways, their story never truly ended.